Can dreams predict the future? Are they glimpses into dimensions where information lives, and can we access it if we have the right tools? Are we able to realize we're in a dream and change what's happening, or even communicate with other people while in the dream state? Could we look back at past events, current ones happening now, or even events yet to come? What if I told you all of this was real, and dream ESP has been proven by neuroscientists, psychologists, dream researchers, spiritual meditators, and religious men alike? Would it change everything we think we know about how our bodies and the universe are connected? Let's dive into the matrix together as I bring you what I've found about lucid dreaming, prophetic dreams, dream research, the nature of the holographic universe, and more. Between ESP studies that'll blow your mind, to the CIA's own documents, to predictive dreams from Abraham Lincoln and the Lynyrd Skynyrd band, you're about to find out why dreams may just be glimpses into something a whole lot deeper than you ever thought. Would it surprise you to hear that secret dream studies have been conducted since the 60s? Yeah, because researchers were basically super confused by reports from not just meditators, religious men, or occultists, but by regular people. Dreamers were able to gain information about a target without using normal sensory input or normal logic. Think about that for a minute. I mean, if you were a scientist who discovered that people were dreaming about true things they couldn't have known about, wouldn't you want to understand that better? I would. In fact, an analysis was done on 50 years of results from dream studies that had been conducted between 1966 and 2016. And researchers from Australia, the UK, and Italy concluded that dream content can be used to identify target materials correctly and more often than would be expected by chance. So how does it work and why? One team decided to pioneer dream research and get to the bottom of it all. Montague Ullman founded the Maimonides Medical Center's Dream Research Lab in Brooklyn, New York in the 60s and brought in Stanley Kryner, a professor of psychology, to be its director. They'd heard about the University of Chicago's Rapid Eye Movement Sleep Research, or REM, so they designed an experiment to wake people up when they were in REM and see if they could identify a picture that was sealed in an envelope in another room. Sounds a lot like remote viewing to me. I think I'd be more likely to put someone in a figure-4 leg lock if they suddenly woke me up in the middle of a dream. But I guess people will do anything for money. Their first participant was a famous medium, Eileen Garrett. That night, Eileen had a dream about a chariot race with a team of black horses and a team of white horses racing each other. It was just like a scene from that novel, Ben-Hur, she'd read years before. Well, the next day, when they opened the envelope to see which image had been placed inside it before the experiment, they saw that it was a still from a movie, the movie adaptation of Ben-Hur. Kryner said she'd hit the nail on the head. Of course, that was only one person, so this inspired the team to do more dream studies with more and more controls. They did more than 200 experiments, publishing all of them publicly in articles and books so anyone could see their results and replicate them in their own labs. 100 articles also made it into psychiatric, psychological, and medical journals over the years. But why would it be important if dream ESP or extrasensory perception were real? First of all, the government was very interested. Yeah, of course they were. In 1973, the National Institute of Mental Health, or the NIMH, or NIM, awarded the Maimonides Medical Center's Division of Parapsychology and Psychophysics a $52,000 grant, which was a lot of money at the time. It was the first major federal grant awarded for parapsychological research. But why so much money? Maimonides' research was shaking up the world. A senior research associate at Maimonides said they'd found that 65% of spontaneous ESP not occurring in a lab or under monitored conditions take place in dreams. Some of the predictions were alarming. During one experiment in the lab, a research associate in hematology at Maimonides named Felicia Paris was a subject. On July 20th, she dreamed she saw a coworker reading a newspaper. But this dream was unusual. She told the man monitoring her dreams, "Mark this one down, Steve, it's precognitive." On the front page of the Dream newspaper, the Daily News, she'd seen a picture of a collapsed building. Exactly 2 weeks later, on August 3rd, the old Broadway Central Hotel collapsed, and the News printed a picture of the wreckage on its front page. A picture that was virtually identical to the one in Felicia's dreams. So maybe that's the secret of NIM. They want to predict the future. Side note, you might remember the 1982 movie, The Secret of NIM, which was adapted from a book written in 1971. It was all inspired by real mouse and rat experiments done by the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIM, between the 40s and the 60s. But what's super weird is that in the book and movie, NIM figured out how to increase the animal's intelligence to where they could live extremely long lives, operate machinery, and even read and write. They're all led by a mysterious wise rat who can see the future. The word on the street is that this was really being researched in the National Institute of Mental Health. One of the most interesting things Maimonides found in their research was that the environment had an effect on dream ESP. They'd always taken care to make a nice atmosphere, be kind to the subjects, and all that, which seemed to help. But then they read an article by psychology professor Michael Persinger that changed everything. Persinger had noticed that during periods of geomagnetic calm on the Earth, spontaneous cases of psychic activity were reported more often to the British Society for Psychical Research. Well, Kryner and the team at Maimonides had to find out for themselves if this affected dreams too. So they sent Persinger their data. Persinger found that on the nights there were few sunspots, few electrical storms, and calm magnetic nights. Those were filled with significantly more hits than the nights marked by electrical storms.
We live in a cosmos. What people do is part of a totality. And who are we to say that the relationship between two people in and of itself, the only thing that produces stuff like telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition?
So if there's electrical noise, it interferes with the human brain's ability to receive telepathic or clairvoyant imagery. Maybe that's our sign to put down the iPhones and take out the Neuralink chips in our heads. It really is an electric universe, and we're part of it. But I know what you're thinking. Couldn't Maimonides have faked the dream ESP? Well, multiple other labs tested to see if they could replicate the results. And in an analysis of all the labs that tried over the years, the total number of replications was above chance. Then the studies got better. Instead of comparing dreams to images sealed in envelopes, Kryner designed something new. He tested if a man could dream about an experience he would have during the tests the next day, not just an image. And they wouldn't plan which experience was his ahead of time. I don't know, moonwalk, learn to juggle. The next morning, an assistant rolled some dice, pulled a corresponding box from the storeroom, and unsealed it. Inside the box was the man's experience for the day. He was to watch a slideshow about birds. How boring is that? I was hoping he'd moonwalk. Well, get this. When they went back to the data to see what the man had reported dreaming about the previous night, every single dream was about birds. Bruh. Here's why that was actually mind-blowing. Without the researchers themselves knowing what experience was going to be in the box they would pull off the wall, the test subject was still able to see it ahead of time anyway. He was now officially a prophet. He saw it in his dream before it happened. So then, was he able to access that information in another dimension where that future already existed? How did he do it? Well, this kind of interdimensional dream research was just the beginning. The CIA secretly took it a lot further.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
In 1983, U.S. Army Lieutenant Commander Wayne M. McDonald, because they're all named something like that, wrote a report so astounding that linked together so many things in relation to ESP, dreams, and the power of the mind that I'll just tell you what they found. The report analyzed the results of the gateway process that the CIA had worked on with the Monroe Institute, a world leader in studying human consciousness, parapsychology, and remote viewing. The gateway experience, or the gateway process, was an attempt to achieve altered states of consciousness involving brain hemisphere synchronization, or what they called Hemi-Sync. Most importantly, they'd started seeing other countries like the Soviet Union start to research how the mind worked, so, they wanted to get into it too. The objective of the gateway experience was to expand human consciousness to transcend the time-space dimension. Basing their research on 1, the findings from biomedical engineering pioneer Itzhak Bentov, 2, transcendental meditators' bodily states, and 3, other data. They developed a way to manipulate the hemispheres of the brain with a new training system. Quote, fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and the right hemispheres so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. The participant then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers, unquote. How? Hemi-Sync worked by playing 2 different frequencies at once so that the binaural beats would be created between them, relaxing the brain and bringing the right and left hemispheres into equal frequencies. The report said, quote, gateway assumes that once the frequency and amplitude of the human brain are rendered coherent, it is possible to begin accelerating both so that the human mind is soon resonating at ever higher vibrational levels. The mind can then bring itself into synchronization with more sophisticated and rarefied energy levels in the universe, unquote. Basically, once the brain resonated with a particular level, the theory was that the information at that level would be accessible to the person. Reach higher and higher levels and gain access to higher and higher levels of information. It's like your body becomes a tuning fork, first aligned with the frequency of the Earth, and then beyond. Get this. Itzhak Bentov found that resonance was super important biologically because vibrations were occurring in the brain, the fluid around it, and the ventricles above the brainstem, and electromagnetic pulses would influence the brainwave output. When the resonance produced by the heart, when the body was very relaxed, reached the fluid around the brain, a rhythmic pattern would make the brain move up and down very slightly in a pattern. And this is what's most amazing of all. These micromotions were a tuned vibrational system that transferred energy into the Earth's ionospheric cavity, resonating at the same rate as the person. Now, Itzhak Bentov explained this if you're still a little lost. Quote, this is occurring at a very long wavelength of about 40,000 kilometers, or just about the perimeter of the planet. In other words, the signal from the movement of our bodies will travel around the world in about 1/7 of a second through the electrostatic field in which we are embedded. Such a long wavelength knows no obstacles, and its strength does not attenuate much over large distances. Naturally, it will go through just about anything: metal, concrete, water, and the fields making up our bodies. It is the ideal medium for conveying a telepathic signal, unquote. So this makes us telepathic super beings? They thought that once the brain resonates at the same frequency as the Earth around it, then the body is in the same state as its surrounding environment. At this point, the seat of consciousness, which is basically you, your thinking mind, can be projected into that environment because they're now a single energy continuum. Think about that. Your mind is operating at the same frequency as the entire Earth and can instantaneously move to any point across the globe because it's on the same vibrational level. When the body's energy levels are higher and higher, aligning with different areas of the universe, the subject can have out-of-body experiences and movement. This state can also aid in telepathy because, quote, by resonating with the Earth's electromagnetic sphere, the human body creates a surprisingly powerful carrier wave to assist the mind in communication activity with other human minds similarly tuned, unquote. What does this have to do with dreams and other dimensions, though? The point of relaxation, or the vibrational brainwave state that you reach when you're dreaming, can be achieved on purpose, as the gateway experiments showed. People could click out of their body, having out-of-body experiences that help them access higher states of consciousness and more energy. Sounds a lot like what meditators experience when their minds and bodies reach a point of tranquility where they're resonating at a different level and reporting amazing experiences. It also sounds a lot like dreamers. Let me give you a historical example. Ever heard of Abraham Lincoln's interest in dreams?
For in dreams we enter a world that's entirely our own. Let them swim in the deepest ocean or glide over the highest cloud.
Abraham Lincoln was apparently interested in the meaning of dreams and what they have to say about future events. Just a few days before his assassination on April 14, 1865, he told his wife Mary and some friends about a dream he'd had. In the dream, he walked into the East Room of the White House and found a covered corpse being guarded by soldiers and mourners all around. He asked the soldier who died, and the man replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." Interestingly, Lincoln didn't see this as an omen of his own death and thought the body in the dream wasn't his. But he did clearly believe in the power of dreams. On one occasion in 1863, he'd written a letter to his wife when he was away saying that Mary had better put his son's pistol away because he'd had an ugly dream about him. So Lincoln must have dreamed this kid blew his head off or something and wanted to prevent it.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Abraham Lincoln also had a recurring dream of sailing across an unknown body of water at great speed, which always seemed to happen before nearly every important event of the war. And he had that recurring dream one last time the night before he died, if you can believe that. Were these events of the war somehow electrically charged, either atmospherically or cosmically, or just due to people's mental states at the time? Think about what kind of electrical waves or other impulses would be created when something like the assassination of a president happens, or a major moment in a war. Can people tap into that? Could Abraham Lincoln have had out-of-body experiences and he didn't realize it? The Gateway Report claimed that Bob Monroe, the founder of the Monroe Institute, who had conducted the Gateway experience for the CIA, said that an ex-trainer of his found something incredible. He could guarantee out-of-body experiences by bringing participants down into rapid eye movement, REM, state of sleep, and then use the Hemi-Sync tape technique. The document revealed, quote, "This may well be a function of that fact that most, if not all people reputedly go into an out-of-body state during REM sleep," unquote. What? CIA-funded studies and decades of research led to the conclusion that most people are actually leaving their bodies to go somewhere else when they're sleeping. Amazingly, they understood that, quote, "the concept of the universe, which at least some physicists are now coming to accept, is identical in its essential aspects with the one known to the learned elite in selected civilizations and cultures of high attainment in the ancient world," unquote. Let me put this into English for you. I guess the ancients weren't just a bunch of spiritual nuts sitting in the lotus position for nothing. They really were having experiences, reaching higher levels, and seeing things. Gateway also warned that if people were to use their protocol, quote, "be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded," unquote. So they met Jesus, or Elvis, or an alien, or all three. But that's a rabbit hole for another day. Dreams cross over into lucid dreaming when it's on purpose and you're aware of it. When you can realize you're dreaming or that your brain is in a dreamlike state, you can control it. That's what the CIA and other entities were interested in. If you can intentionally operate in other dimensions, unrestricted by the confines of your own body, and have the universe to run around in, think of the implications. Well, they certainly did, and they thought about ways to use this knowledge as a weapon. Of course, it's the CIA. On the CIA's own website, I found a document from 1961. There had been a symposium in Moscow in 1960 that the CIA found important enough to translate into English and keep in their records on the topic of thought transmission. It's funny though, because the Soviets were actually talking quite a bit about what the Americans were up to. Spies spying on spies. In a French magazine report, the Soviets had discovered that the Americans had conducted thought transmission experiments aboard the submarine Nautilus. And the Soviets were considering what research to do in the field if this were true. They saw other Americans, like the famous writer Upton Sinclair, were publishing amazing accounts of telepathy as well. Sinclair's wife, Mary, when she was in a dream state or otherwise, could receive thoughts out of nowhere. Once when Upton was reading and Mary was daydreaming, scribbling on a piece of paper, she looked down and noticed she'd subconsciously drawn some kind of flowers. She asked Upton, "What are you reading about?" He answered, "Flowers." They experimented many times with telepathy beyond this, as you can imagine. In 1932, they also documented women being put into hypnotic sleeps via remote suggestion, with a hypnologist not even in the same room as the subject they were trying to influence. The Soviets called it Upton Sinclair's mental radio, which is exactly what both the Americans and the Soviets were looking to create. Imagine a military being able to communicate with a submarine underwater just with the mind. Imagine a country being able to influence someone else's behavior just with the mind. Talk about literal brainwashing. I mean, think about it. Now imagine a team being able to communicate via the mind with an astronaut out in space. Amazingly, one document I found really revealed that attempt. The CIA had a document called China's Psychic Children with the subtitle, quote, "is an ancient form of energy providing China's children with the miracle of second sight," unquote. They described how in the late 70s, psychic children were being reported all over China, being able to read messages on paper with their skin instead of their eyes, predict the future, see through objects, and perform telekinesis. And this overlapped with dream research. In 1981, a group of Americans interested in parapsychology traveled to China, including Stanley Kryner, who you'll remember had helped pioneer dream research in the Maimonides Dream Lab starting in the 60s. He'd also taken trips to the Soviet bloc to get info on psychic research there. Well, in China, his group met with researchers from Beijing Medical College, Beijing University, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Now, the author of the document was skeptical that an energy like qi, which the Easterners were speaking of, really existed. He thought qigong might be nothing more than a Chinese version of aerobics. But their host explained that there were qigong masters who were able to accomplish extraordinary feats, including the ability to emerge unscathed when struck on the bare chest with a huge slab of stone or the blade of a sword. Out of 3,100 chronically ill patients practicing Qigong from 3 to 5 years, 25% recovered completely, 44% showed marked improvement, and 22% showed moderate improvement. People, these aren't just movements then. The group began traveling to see demonstrations of savant children they'd heard about. Some indeed amazed them, being able to tell what was inside sealed canisters or symbols written on crumpled up paper without reading it. Some, of course, were incorrect too. The Americans next planned a series of meetings with the staff from Nature Journal, Shanghai University professors, and faculty at the Science and Technology Association. So these were very well-educated, scientifically minded people who were just interested in the truth about exceptional human functions, or EHF, as the paper called them. Suddenly, the meetings were mysteriously canceled. Surprise, surprise. Mid-trip, the Americans learned that Yu Guangyun, the vice chairman of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and vice director of the Institute of Marxism-Leninism and Thoughts of Mao Zedong, had attacked parapsychology in the press. He wrote in the People's Daily that such EHF research was nonsense and superstition. Then why were you guys and thousands of academics studying it? He specifically targeted the publisher of Nature Journal and the main contact that these Americans' translator had in China. Not only was it all slander in the media, but Yu Guangyun also organized a committee called the EHF Investigation and Liaison Unit to expose deception in claims of the paranormal. basically to silence anyone interested in learning more. Because so many people had recently lived through the Cultural Revolution, where academics had been purged from China and even killed, most of the Chinese researchers they planned to meet suddenly faded away. Some enthusiastic ones did visit the Americans' hotel, though. The Americans, being Americans, were mostly interested in whether they could replicate the experiments. Okay, we believe it's possible, but can they be proven? Until then, they couldn't give the claims of savant children full weight. But these disruptions didn't stop all the Chinese researchers who were interested in more. Soon after the decree and criticisms in China, the vice director of the Institute of Aerospace Medico Engineering and the vice director of Space Life Science Commission attended a meeting in Cambridge where they revealed they were interested in using EHF, or exceptional human functions, for communication in space. They said that Qigong was now part of their astronauts training program and revealed that Chinese parapsychological experiments were revealing ESP, with absolutely correct answers greater than 80% of the time. It far exceeded what the American team had seen, and it revealed that across the entire world, dream and ESP research was changing the way people understood everything about how the human body and the universe work together. You know, in one declassified document on the CIA website, it described a technique that was developed in studies throughout the 80s, where a dreamer could actually know they were dreaming and physically signal to the waking world that they were aware. They developed masks equipped with sensors and lights that would penetrate people's dreams, and the dreamer would then communicate back through their eye movement to the researchers. What are the implications of all of this research, though? If all this was known 40, 50, 100 years ago at this point, where is private technology and spiritual understanding developed to today?
I have been very conscious of the fact that our findings do have an impact that goes beyond psychology, goes beyond science, and goes into the culture. It liberates people from refusing to talk about psychic experiences and unusual dreams. It gives them the freedom to talk about this without being medicated or diagnosed as mentally ill, because these dreams, even if the dreams are the result of coincidence or other causes, these dreams are part of mainstream dreaming.
Mainstream dreaming here alludes to it being part of everybody's dreams. I'll leave you with this, because I found the craziest example of how dreams can be prophetic through the band Lynyrd Skynyrd. You won't believe what we found. In an interview, backing vocalist JoJo Billingsley said, quote, "That night when I went to sleep, I woke up after God gave me the most vivid dream of my life. I dreamed the band's plane crashed. I saw the whole thing in my dream 2 nights before it really happened. The next day after my dream, I called to try and warn them to please not get back on the plane. I later learned that they took a vote before they left Greenville that it would be their last time to fly on that plane. Well, we know it was." JoJo was the only one not on that plane, and she'd known it was real. She had woken up screaming and crying, which woke up her mother. JoJo told her the plane had crashed, and her mom tried to tell her, "No, honey, it was just a dream." But she said, "No, Mom, it's too real." So if it's possible to communicate with people across metal and walls, across time and space, if it's possible to predict future events on purpose to some extent, if it's possible to change our own brain states via meditation or external factors, then some dreams mean a whole lot more than we ever thought. Between ESP studies that were blowing everyone's minds, to the CIA's own documents, to predictive dreams from Abraham Lincoln and the Lynyrd Skynyrd band, it's clear that dreams are glimpses into something a whole lot deeper. Next time you dream, what do you think you'll find? Have you ever had a dream that turned out to be real? Leave me a comment with your experience. I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you like this type of content and want more, please think about supporting my work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv. With your help, we can give you more exclusive content and products. Products like our metaphysical merch that I designed, which you can get by visiting the link in the description. And if you want to hear some longer conversational shows, our metaphysical podcast dived into the details of remote viewing, the power of the mind, and so much more. So definitely check that out. And with that, I hope you thought this episode was out of this world.